AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée have their wedding on my property after how they treated my wife. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée have their wedding on my property after how they treated my wife. I, 36M, live with my wife, 34F, Sophie, and our 2 kids on a rural property that I inherited from our grandfather. It's about 10 acres of mostly open field, some trees, and a big barn that we renovated last year into an event space. It's not a full business, just something we sometimes rent out to cover upkeep. We live in a farmhouse nearby, and the whole place has been in our family for 3 generations. My wife and I spent 2 years and a lot of money fixing it up, so it feels like a second home to us. My younger brother Tyler, 31M, got engaged last fall to his fiancée Jenna, 29F. They were originally planning a destination wedding in Mexico, but a few months ago they told us they'd changed their minds due to budget and logistics. Instead, they wanted something more homey and rustic. Naturally, they asked if they could have the wedding on our property. I was open to the idea, but I said Sophie and I needed to talk about it first. It would require closing off the barn and land to other bookings, and there's always a lot of prep involved: cleaning, power setup, parking, etc. Sophie had concerns. She's been through a lot with my family, especially Jenna, and didn't feel entirely comfortable. Jenna has always been a bit standoffish towards Sophie, especially after we got engaged before they did. At family events, she tended to talk over Sophie, correct her about small things, or just plain ignore her. At Thanksgiving last year, Sophie brought a homemade pie and Jenna made a big show of accidentally leaving it out in the garage fridge until everyone had already eaten dessert. I didn't think it was malicious at the time, but now I'm not so sure. Anyway, Sophie said she'd be okay with it if Jenna could be civil and respectful, especially since it's our home. I relayed that to Tyler, who said it was fine, and that they'd both appreciate it a lot. Fast forward to 3 weeks ago. Jenna and Tyler came to look at the property and discuss logistics. Everything was going fine until Jenna started nitpicking things. She said the barn looked smaller than she remembered. She's been to one of our events before. Asked if we could repaint the front doors a less dated color, and whether we'd be okay with trimming some of the trees near the ceremony area. Sophie politely said we weren't planning on making any major changes, but Jenna pushed back, saying it was just for aesthetics and only if you want the pictures to look nice. Sophie was clearly getting irritated, but stayed calm. I said we'd think about the trees, but repainting the doors was off the table. Jenna sulked a bit, but let it go. That night, I got a message from one of Jenna's bridesmaids, someone we barely know, asking if we could try not to be too in the way during the rehearsal dinner. I asked what that meant, and apparently Jenna had told her she'd prefer if Sophie stayed inside the house during most of the wedding stuff because she's not really part of the wedding party, and Jenna wants a certain vibe. I was stunned. I called Tyler and asked him what the hell that was about. He downplayed it, said Jenna was just being a perfectionist and that it wasn't meant as an insult. I said it was absolutely insulting, and if Sophie wasn't welcome, then neither was the wedding. He got defensive, said I was blowing things out of proportion, and that Jenna had just envisioned the day a certain way. I said, well, this is our property and our home, not a wedding venue you're renting anonymously. I told him they needed to apologize to Sophie or find a new location. He said we were being unreasonable and selfish, and hung up. A week later, my parents called, saying Tyler and Jenna had booked a winery about 90 minutes away. Apparently, Jenna told them that Sophie had sabotaged the wedding by being territorial and unwelcoming. My parents are mostly neutral, but said they think I should have just let it go for family's sake. I asked them if they'd be okay with someone asking Dad to stay out of sight at his own house during an event, and that kind of quieted them. Now the extended family is split. Some think I was defending my wife. Others think I should have sucked it up and avoided the drama. Even Tyler's best man texted me saying he gets it, but thought we escalated too fast. I honestly thought I was being fair, offering the space for free, asking only for mutual respect. Sophie has thanked me multiple times for standing up for her, but I can tell the whole thing has been eating at her. She feels like the villain in their story now, even though she was literally just asking to be treated like a human being in her own home. I don't regret prioritizing my wife, but I also hate that it's caused this much family tension. AITA. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and motivates me to create even more amazing content just for you. Make sure to turn on notifications so you'll never miss out on a new video. I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support. It truly helps the channel grow. AITA for refusing to let my husband's daughter move in with us after she disrespected me repeatedly. I, 38F, have been married to my husband, Tom, 42M, for 6 years. We met when his daughter Lily, now 17, was 11. Her mother passed away when she was very young, and she was raised primarily by her paternal grandparents, who live a few towns over. Tom was involved, but not the primary caregiver due to a demanding job and complicated custody arrangements with the grandparents. When we got married, Lily didn't live with us. She would come over every other weekend and sometimes during school breaks. When I met Lily, I tried hard to bond with her. I know it's tough for kids to accept a step-parent, and I never wanted to replace her mom, but I hope we could have a cordial, maybe even close, relationship over time. I did everything I could think of, attending her school events, remembering her favorite snacks, learning about her hobbies, keeping my distance when she needed space, and being respectful of her time with Tom. But from the start, Lily made it very clear she did not like me. She would ignore me when I greeted her, roll her eyes when I tried to talk to her, and give me one-word answers if I asked anything about her day or interests. At first, I chalked it up to her being young and grieving in her own way. But as time went on, it got worse. She would tell her grandparents I was trying to take over her life, even though I rarely intervened in anything that wasn't directly about me. She would accuse me of lying about things I didn't do, like saying I threw away her favorite hoodie when I had never even seen it. She told Tom once that I yelled at her, which was absolutely not true, and luckily, he didn't believe it, but he still told me to try harder to win her over. For the first 3 years of our marriage, I really did try. I talked to therapists, read books on step-parenting, even suggested family counseling, which Lily flat out refused. Meanwhile, Tom would keep brushing it off, saying she'll come around, she's just going through a phase, and don't take it personally. I tried to be patient, but it wore on me. By the time Lily was 15, she barely spoke to me at all. She would come over, go straight to her room, and only emerge when Tom was around. If I asked her anything, even something simple like, "Do you want dinner?" she would respond with, "Why do you care?" or "Don't pretend you care about me." At one point, she told me to my face, "You'll never be anything to me, so stop trying." That broke something in me. After that, I pulled back. I stopped trying to engage with her, and we maintained a polite but distant relationship. I stopped organizing special meals when she visited and started planning my weekend around not being home when she was there. Tom noticed, but never pushed me. I think he knew I had reached my limit. Fast forward to this year. Lily got into a big argument with her grandparents, something about house rules, chores, and wanting more independence, and decided she didn't want to live with them anymore. She told Tom she wanted to move in with us for her last year of high school. Tom was thrilled. He said this could be a new beginning for them, a chance to be a full-time dad again. He came to me with tears in his eyes, saying, "She finally wants to be here. It's what I've always dreamed of." But I felt sick. I told him I wasn't comfortable with it, that I couldn't live under the same roof with someone who has treated me with so much contempt for years. I reminded him of the things she's said to me, the way she's made me feel like an intruder in my own home, and how he's never really defended me or set boundaries with her. I said I wasn't going to pretend to be okay with it now, just because she's ready. Tom was stunned. He said I was being petty and vindictive, punishing a teenager for being emotional and confused. I told him that being emotional is one thing, but years of consistent disrespect is another. I asked him what would happen if she moved in and continued treating me like I don't belong in my own house. Would he stand up for me? Or would I be told again to not take it personally? He didn't have a good answer. He just kept saying, "This is my daughter, and she needs me." I told him I respected that, but I wasn't going to sacrifice my peace and mental health to make that happen. If she moved in, I would move out. I wasn't threatening divorce, just separation until we could figure out boundaries that protected me too. That led to a massive fight. He accused me of trying to drive a wedge between him and his daughter. I told him the wedge had been there for years, and I was just no longer willing to pretend it wasn't. Word got back to Lily somehow, and she apparently told her grandparents I was kicking her out before she even moved in. Now they're calling me selfish and unkind, saying I knew what I was getting into when I married a man with a kid. Even some of Tom's friends have told me I should be the bigger person and set an example. I feel like I've tried to do exactly that for 6 years. I've been patient, respectful, even hopeful at times, but I've also been treated like an outsider in my own home. Now, just when I found a balance that protects my emotional well-being, I'm being asked to throw that away to accommodate someone who's never once made an effort to meet me halfway. Tom hasn't spoken much to me in the last week. He says he's processing everything and trying to figure out what to do. Meanwhile, I'm stuck wondering if I really am the villain here. AITA for not letting her move in. AITA for telling my sister I'm not helping her with her dream wedding after how she treated me for years. I, 28F, have an older sister, Megan, 32F, and we have never had the close, movie-like sisterly bond she thinks we do. From as early as I can remember, Megan was the golden child. My parents were not cruel or neglectful, but they absolutely enabled her. If Megan needed something, everyone dropped what they were doing to help. If I needed something, I was told to wait, or told Megan had a lot on her plate, so I shouldn't complain. When we were kids, Megan could do no wrong. She borrowed my clothes without asking and ruined a few of them, but my mom said I should be flattered she wanted to wear them. She'd lie and say I hit her or took her stuff, and even when I swore I didn't, she was believed. I was grounded. She was praised. I could go on for hours. Once in high school, she told a group of popular girls about my crush on one of their boyfriends, and I got humiliated at lunch. Megan said it was just a joke and that I needed to toughen up. She never apologized. No one ever made her. I kept my head down, worked hard in school, and got a scholarship to a decent university. Megan stayed closer to home, went to a community college for a bit, and bounced around jobs for a few years. Eventually, she landed in marketing, and I will admit she's good at what she does. We don't talk often, but family holidays bring us into the same room. I'm civil, but there's a wall up. Megan pretends we're best friends who just grew apart, and our parents keep saying things like sisters always find their way back. Now the fun part. Megan got engaged last year to her boyfriend of 2 years, Chris. He's fine, polite, a little bland, but seems to genuinely love her. They announced their engagement at our parents' house, and Megan immediately started making this big speech about how she's always dreamed of her wedding being a family affair. She said she wanted me to be her maid of honor. I was stunned. I hadn't expected to be invited to the wedding, let alone be in it. But everyone in the room turned to me expectantly, so I smiled and said something like, "That's sweet. I'll think about it." Megan laughed like I was joking and hugged me. I didn't bring it up for a few weeks. Then she called me and said she was putting me in charge of planning the bachelorette trip. I told her I hadn't said yes to being maid of honor, and she got quiet, then asked why. I told her calmly that we're not close. We've never really been close, and I don't feel comfortable playing that role in her life when we have so much unaddressed history. She blew up, said I was punishing her for being more popular growing up, that I was always jealous of her, and that I needed to grow up and stop clinging to old drama. I reminded her of specific incidents, and she brushed them off as kids being kids. I said that's exactly the point. She wants to act like we're sisters in name and function when she's never treated me like one. She hung up on me. A few days later, I got a group text from my mom with Megan and me in it. My mom asked if we could all agree to just make the wedding fun, and said she didn't want this silly fight to ruin the experience. I told them I wasn't coming to the wedding. Megan texted separately, asking if I'd at least help her with some of the planning since she's so stressed and needed a woman's support system right now. I didn't respond. Fast forward to 2 weeks ago, my parents hosted a birthday dinner for my dad, and Megan was there. She pulled me aside at one point and said she'd let go of the maid of honor thing if I helped pay for the decorations and flowers. I asked her why she thought I owed her money for her wedding. She said, "Because you're not doing anything else, and you have a better job than me. Isn't that what sisters are for?" I looked her in the eye and told her no. Sisters are supposed to be there for each other, not just use each other when it's convenient. You made it clear for years that you weren't interested in me unless I was useful to you. You don't get to suddenly expect my support because you've decided it's time to pretend we're close. She got teary and said I was being cruel, that family doesn't keep score, and I should let go of the past. I said I have let go of the past. I've let go of any hope that she'd change or apologize. I told her I wished her the best, but I'm not participating in her wedding or her fantasy of us being close. She walked out and cried in the car for half an hour. My mom said I embarrassed her and ruined the dinner. Now most of my family is telling me I need to just get over it and be the bigger person. Megan texted me a long message about how I'm clearly still bitter and that she's moving on without me, but that I should think about what I'm throwing away. I haven't responded. I'll admit I felt a little guilty seeing her cry, but it also felt like the first time I really stood up for myself. Still, it's hard when everyone around me is acting like I'm the villain in this story. So, AITA for refusing to be part of my sister's wedding or help her with it, even though we're family? AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move into my house even though she's about to be homeless? This whole thing is blown up in my face, and now half of my family isn't speaking to me. I'm feeling really conflicted about everything, and I genuinely don't know if I've become some heartless monster or if people are just manipulating me. For background, I, 36M, bought a house 3 years ago after saving for nearly a decade. I work in IT and live alone, pretty simply, and I don't spend much beyond the basics. The house was a fixer-upper that I've been slowly renovating on weekends. It's my project, my home, my space. My sister, Nina, 39F, has had a rough few years. She has 3 kids, 14M, 11F, and 8M, and went through a nasty divorce 2 years ago. Her ex was controlling and financially abusive, and when she finally left him, she had almost nothing. She moved in with our mom temporarily, but that situation deteriorated fast. My mom is not an easy person to live with, and after some huge blowout a few months back, Nina and the kids left and moved into a small apartment. Since then, she's been working part-time while trying to go back to school for a degree in early childhood education. She's scraping by on assistance, child support, and her job, but it's not sustainable. Last month, Nina told me her lease wasn't being renewed and that she had nowhere to go. She asked if she and the kids could move into my house just until she gets on her feet. I told her I needed time to think about it. Here's the thing. I'm not anti-kid, but I'm very introverted and deeply value my quiet, controlled environment. I have chronic migraines that get triggered by noise and chaos. I have a home office I need for my remote job, and I've spent years making my space manageable for my health. I also know Nina. She's messy, chaotic, and tends to assume others will pick up the slack. I love my nieces and nephew, but they're loud and have a lot of behavioral issues due to everything they've gone through. My house has 2 bedrooms and a finished attic I use as my office and hobby room. It's not set up for a family of 4. When I told Nina that I didn't think it would work, she started crying and said she had no one else. She said if I didn't help her, she and the kids would end up in a shelter. I told her I'd be willing to help her with a deposit for a new apartment or co-sign if she needed that, but I couldn't live with 4 extra people indefinitely. She flipped out, told me I was choosing comfort over family, that I'd rather watch her children suffer than let them sleep under my roof. I stood firm, and she hasn't spoken to me since. My mom called me screaming, saying I was abandoning my family and that she didn't raise a son to turn his back on blood. She said it's only temporary, and I'm selfish for not sacrificing a little for my sister. Our older brother is on my side, but he lives across the country and has 2 toddlers of his own, so he can't do much to help. Friends are divided. Some say I'm well within my rights. Others say it's cruel to let kids suffer when I have the means to prevent it. I feel like if I let them in, it could become permanent. Nina has a pattern of expecting other people to fix things for her, and I'm afraid I'll be stuck in a situation that deteriorates my health and work. But saying no to a mom and 3 kids about to be homeless is making me feel like the worst kind of person. And it's not like I don't want to help. I offered money. I even offered to help her apply for emergency housing aid and connected her with a nonprofit that helps single moms. She refused all of it, said she didn't want charity and just needed a roof over their heads for a couple of months. But I don't believe it'll be just a couple of months. What if she loses her part-time job? What if school gets harder and she needs more time? What if the kids destroy the house? What if I have a migraine and can't work because of the noise? I work in cybersecurity, and my job is demanding. I gotta be sharp and focused. I can't afford to be exhausted or distracted. If I lose my job, I lose my house. And then we're both screwed. I tried explaining this, but she said I was making excuses and being dramatic. Last week, she posted this long Facebook post about being betrayed by the one person she trusted most and how family only loves you when it's convenient. She didn't name me, but everyone knew who it was about. I started getting DMs from cousins I haven't spoken to in years calling me selfish, spoiled, privileged, heartless. One even said, "How do you sleep at night while your sister's kids cry themselves to sleep on a floor?" So now I feel like garbage. My brother keeps telling me I did the right thing, that it's okay to have boundaries. But it's hard to keep that perspective when people are accusing you of turning your back on children. I haven't heard anything from Mina in over a week. I don't know where they're staying now. I've been tempted more than once to call her and say they can come, that I'll make it work somehow. But then I remember the last time she lived with someone and how they had to evict her. I honestly don't know anymore. I didn't make this decision lightly. I've always tried to be the reliable one in the family. But now I feel like everyone hates me. I feel like I failed her. Maybe I'm being too precious about my space. Maybe this is what family is supposed to do. Sacrifice for each other even when it hurts. I just can't shake this awful feeling that I'm doing something irreversible. That someday, her kids will grow up and remember the uncle who turned them away. That she'll never forgive me. That I'll regret this when I'm old and alone in this too big house. But I also can't shake the fear that letting them in will destroy the life I've spent years building. So I'm stuck between guilt and self-preservation. AITA? AITA for refusing to give my sister the inheritance our grandparents left for me, even though she says she needs it more. I'm 28F. My sister, Kayla, 26F, and I were both raised by our grandparents from the time I was 10 and she was 8. Our mom was struggling with addiction for years, in and out of rehab, and our dad was never really in the picture. So our grandparents stepped in and raised us. They were good people, old school but kind. My grandmother was a librarian, and my grandfather ran a small repair shop until he retired. They weren't rich by any means, but they were very careful with their money, and they saved a lot over the years. They always made it clear that they had money set aside for us, and that they wanted us to use it for something meaningful, education, a home, or something that would give us a solid foundation. They passed away within a year of each other, about 3 years ago. It was awful. They were our parents in every real way. I was devastated, and so was Kayla. After the funeral, the lawyer told us that our grandparents had left separate trust funds for each of us, with instructions that they be distributed when we each turned 25. Since I was already 25, I got mine right away. Kayla had to wait a couple years. The amount was not life-changing, but it was substantial, about $120,000. I used part of mine to pay off my student loans, then bought a modest condo in a smaller town where I now work as a teacher. I've kept the rest in savings and investments. I don't live lavishly, but I live comfortably and securely, which is all I ever really wanted. Kayla turned 25 last month. When she called me that day, I assumed she'd gotten the money. But she told me there was nothing left, that our grandparents had left everything to me. I was shocked and immediately told her that wasn't true. I had seen the documents. The money was split equally between us. She said the lawyer told her the funds set aside for her was empty. I called the lawyer. After some back and forth and digging, the truth came out. Kayla had already received the money early, almost a year ago, after she petitioned the court with a hardship claim, saying she needed the money for medical expenses. I had no idea she had done this. What really happened was she used the money to start a business with her boyfriend, some kind of boutique custom clothing store. It failed within 6 months. They burned through the entire inheritance, rent, inventory, branding, a trip to LA for inspiration, and God knows what else. Her boyfriend bailed when things started going south. Now she's broke and furious. She says I should give her half of my inheritance because it was supposed to be equal and she needs it more. She says it's not fair that I got mine when I was mature and responsible enough to use it well. And she got hers when she was going through things and made bad decisions. She says I'm being greedy and that if our grandparents knew how it played out, they would want me to share. I told her no. She cried. She screamed. She said I was abandoning her just like our mom did, just like everyone does. That cut deep. I told her I loved her, but that I wasn't responsible for her mistakes and I wasn't going to undo all the careful planning and sacrifices I made just because she blew through her portion. She hung up on me. Since then, it's been a roller coaster. She's texted me apologies, then gone right back to guilt-tripping me. Our mutual cousin called me a cold bitch and said Kayla is on the verge of being homeless, couch surfing, and deeply depressed. One of my close friends even asked me if I was sure I couldn't spare just a little to help her out, that it might save our relationship. But I feel like this isn't about money anymore. It's about responsibility. She got exactly what I did, and she wasted it. If I give it now, what message does that send? That I'll always clean up her messes? That she never has to face the consequences of her choices? I know she's hurting. I know she's struggling. But I worked really hard to get where I am. I didn't splurge or party or take risks with that money. I honored what her grandparents asked. And now she wants me to just give away half of what I built. There's another layer here that I haven't told anyone. When we were teenagers, Kayla used to steal from me. Clothes, cash, anything she could get her hands on. Our grandparents were too gentle to do more than scold her. I forgave her every time, even when I knew she was lying to my face. I thought she'd grown out of it. But now it feels like the same old pattern. She takes what she wants, and I'm expected to make it okay. She's painted me as the villain to our extended family. People I haven't talked to in years are reaching out, shaming me. But not one of them has offered to help her financially. They just want me to do it. I've gone back and forth a dozen times. I even considered setting up a payment plan or giving her a small loan with strict conditions. But every time I almost reach out, I remember the LA trip, the Instagram photos, the brand launch party, the fact that she knew she was gambling with our grandparents' gift and did it anyway. So here I am, AITA for saying no, for keeping what was left to me and letting her face the consequences of her actions? Or am I just being rigid and unloving when she clearly needs help? AITA for telling my brother's fiancée that she's not part of the family yet and embarrassing her at dinner? This happened last weekend, and it's caused a massive storm in our family. I, 29F, come from a close-knit family, or at least we were before this all blew up. My older brother Adam, 32M, has been dating his fiancée Sarah, 31F, for a little over 2 years. He proposed about 4 months ago, and they're planning a wedding for this upcoming fall. Everyone's been generally happy about it, but Sarah and I have never really clicked. I tried in the beginning, but there's always been a weird vibe between us. She's very assertive and can be blunt to the point of rudeness, whereas I'm more laid back and diplomatic. Despite that, I never try to make an issue out of it. My mom adores her, my dad is indifferent but supportive, and Adam is obviously in love. I figured I'd just keep my distance where needed and focus on being civil for the sake of family harmony. Now for the event in question. Last weekend was my dad's 60th birthday. It was a big deal. We've been planning a dinner party at my parents' house for weeks. My mom wanted it to be a somewhat formal event. Not black tie or anything, but definitely more than just a backyard barbecue. We were all asked to dress nicely, bring a dish, and prepare a few words or a story about Dad for a little memory-sharing portion of the evening. I brought my partner, Tom, 31M, who's been part of the family for over 5 years. Everyone loves him. He and my dad bond over woodworking and football. We show up, dressed appropriately, with a roasted vegetable tartare made and a small gift. The party is going well. Everyone's mingling and laughing. Until Sarah arrives. She walks in wearing distressed jeans and a cropped t-shirt with a graphic that said, "Nope, not today." She was chewing gum and didn't bring a dish. Adam followed her, looking sheepish but said nothing. My mom looked visibly annoyed but tried to mask it. Sarah gave a little wave and said, "Hey fam," like it was some casual hangout. My aunt muttered something under her breath, and I saw my cousin roll her eyes. It got worse from there. During dinner, Sarah dominated the conversation. She talked loudly about her job. She works in tech sales and kept interrupting others to fact-check them with her phone. When my uncle told a story about my dad helping him fix a car in the 90s, she interrupted to say that the model he mentioned didn't come out until 95, not 93 like he'd said. It was obnoxious and unnecessary. Then came the part of the evening where everyone was supposed to share a story or memory about my dad. We were told to keep it brief, meaningful, or funny, just a way to show appreciation. My mom went first with a sweet story about their early years. Then my cousin talked about how my dad coached her soccer team. It was going smoothly. When it was Sarah's turn, she stood up and said, "Well, I don't have any old stories, obviously, since I'm the newest addition, but I think I'll be the favorite daughter-in-law soon, so I'm sure I'll have plenty next year." She then told a story about how my dad finally started liking her when she explained cryptocurrency to him. It was awkward and completely missed the point. My dad smiled politely, but it was clear he was uncomfortable. That's when I made the comment that started the fire. I said, "Well, maybe by next year, you'll have earned the title of daughter-in-law first. Being engaged doesn't make you family yet." I didn't raise my voice or use a sarcastic tone. I genuinely meant it. She had just inserted herself into a family moment and centered the story on herself rather than my dad. It rubbed me the wrong way. Sarah froze. Adam gave me a death glare. Sarah sat down and didn't say anything for the rest of the evening, except for a quiet goodbye when they left early. Since then, all hell has broken loose. Adam called me the next day to say I embarrassed Sarah in front of the whole family and that I need to apologize. My mom is torn. She admits Sarah was inappropriate, but she thinks I shouldn't have said what I did in front of everyone. My dad just said, "You all need to sort this out without dragging me in." My aunt and cousin both messaged me to say they were glad someone finally said something to Sarah because she's been acting entitled from day one. Tom thinks I was a little harsh, but he understands why I said it. He said if it were his sister, he might have done the same. I don't hate Sarah, and I don't want to sabotage her relationship with my brother. But I do feel like people are so afraid of upsetting her that they let her bulldoze everyone. I've been polite for over 2 years, and I finally reached a breaking point. The party was supposed to be about my dad, and instead, she made it all about herself. Adam hasn't spoken to me since the phone call. My mom keeps trying to play peacemaker, but it's making it worse because she keeps relaying messages between us instead of just letting us cool off. Now there's tension in the family group chat, and I'm half considering skipping the next family gathering just to avoid drama. So, AITA for telling my brother's fiancée she's not part of the family yet and embarrassing her in front of everyone. Would you have said something or just let it slide? AITA for refusing to let my brother walk my daughter down the aisle instead of her father. My 42F daughter, Emma, 22F, is getting married this fall. Her fiancé is great. They've been together since college, and I'm honestly thrilled for them. Planning the wedding has been mostly smooth, but there's one issue that's threatening to completely derail everything. Who will walk Emma down the aisle? Emma's father, my ex-husband, Daniel, 45M, and I divorced when she was 14. It wasn't a hostile divorce, but it wasn't clean either. He cheated on me with a co-worker who he ended up marrying. It deeply fractured our family. Emma stayed primarily with me, and while Daniel always paid child support and made efforts to remain involved, there were several years where she barely spoke to him. Their relationship has improved in the last few years. He's apologized for how things happened, and she's tried to forgive him. They're not exactly close, but they talk semi-regularly and meet up a few times a year. I thought things were getting better between them. But a few weeks ago, Emma dropped a bomb on us. We were sitting at brunch going over wedding details, and she casually mentioned that she wanted her uncle, my brother David, 40M, to walk her down the aisle instead of her father. I was stunned. I asked her why, and she said she felt more emotionally connected to David. She said he was there for her during the dark years of the divorce, always present at school events, birthdays, and milestones. He even taught her how to drive. She said she felt like he stepped in when her dad checked out and that it made more sense to have David walk her. I was quiet during this conversation, trying not to react, but I felt so many things. Sadness, confusion, and a creeping sense of guilt, even though this wasn't really my decision. Later that night, I called Daniel and told him what she said. He was absolutely gutted. I've known this man for over 2 decades, and I haven't heard him sound like that since the night I confronted him about the affair. He said he understood that he made mistakes, but he thought they'd made real progress. He said this felt like a public punishment, a declaration to everyone at the wedding that he was a failed father. Over the next few days, things escalated. Daniel reached out to Emma and tried to express his feelings. She held firm. She told him this wasn't about punishing him, but about honoring the person who was truly there for her. That didn't sit well with him, obviously. I tried to stay out of it, but then Emma asked me to formally include David in the wedding program as the man who raised me. At that point, I told her I couldn't support that. I said I would support her decision to have David walk her down the aisle, even if I didn't agree with it, but I drew the line at making a public statement that completely erases her father's presence in her life. That turned into a massive argument. Emma accused me of taking Daniel's side. She said I, of all people, should understand how deeply he hurt both of us. I told her that I did understand, but that at some point, if she's willing to have him in her life again, she can't keep punishing him when it's convenient. She said it wasn't about punishment, it was about authenticity, and if she doesn't feel that connection with him, she shouldn't be forced to pretend on her wedding day. Now here's where I might be the asshole. I told her that if she's going to cut her dad out of such a visible role on a day that's meant to symbolize family unity, then I'm not sure I can participate in the wedding in the same way. I said I wouldn't boycott it, but I didn't feel comfortable giving a mother of the bride speech if the father of the bride wasn't even being acknowledged. She burst into tears and told me I was emotionally blackmailing her, just like her dad. I feel completely torn. On the one hand, I want her to feel like her wedding reflects her truth. On the other hand, I think she's making a decision based on pain that hasn't fully healed. I've been watching Daniel try for years to get back into her life. He's not perfect, far from it, but he's made an effort. And honestly, I don't think my brother David even wants to do it. He's been avoiding the subject ever since Emma brought it up. When I asked him directly how he felt, he looked uncomfortable and said, "I'll do whatever Emma wants, but I think you and Daniel need to talk to her. My husband, Emma's stepfather, says I need to let this go and let Emma make her choice. He said weddings are about the bride, and if this is what brings her peace, I should support it fully. But I just can't shake the feeling that allowing this could blow up what little fragile peace Emma and Daniel have built. Her grandfather, my dad, thinks Emma is being petty and dramatic, and that she's going to regret this when she's older. My mom is mostly staying out of it, though I can tell she agrees with me. The wedding is in 4 months. Invites go out in a couple weeks. We're nearing the point of no return. Emma is still not budging, and Daniel is talking about not attending the wedding at all if he's going to be treated like an afterthought. Part of me feels like I should just step back and let them figure it out. But another part feels like I have to protect some basic level of dignity for everyone involved, including Emma's father. And I can't ignore the fact that I'm hurt too. I was the one who held Emma during all those long nights after the divorce. I was the one who carried the weight. But somehow now it feels like I'm also being pushed aside because I won't go along with her rewriting the story to erase Daniel completely. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to support my daughter's decision to have my brother walk her down the aisle instead of her father, and for saying I might not do a mother of the bride speech if her father isn't acknowledged. AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law move in with us after her divorce, even though we have a spare room and my husband thinks I'm being heartless. So some background. I'm 36F, my husband, Jake, 38M, and I have been married for 10 years. We don't have kids by choice, and we live in a pretty comfortable 3-bedroom house just outside of a mid-sized city. I work in education, and Jake works in IT. We're not rich, but we've worked hard and saved a decent amount. One of the things we really value is our peace and privacy. We've structured our lives around a quiet, drama-free existence. Enter my sister-in-law, Beth, 34F. Beth is Jake's younger sister and has always been a bit volatile. She married young, divorced young, got back together with the same guy, then left again. There's always been a pattern with her. She latches onto people during her low points and leans in hard. Emotionally, financially, logistically, until it starts draining the people around her. Then she disappears when she's back on her feet or finds someone new to latch onto. Beth and I have never been particularly close, though I've always been polite. I've helped her move twice. We've had her over for holidays. I've never been rude or unwelcoming, but I've always kept a bit of a boundary up because she's the kind of person who pushes limits. She'll borrow things indefinitely, show up unannounced, and treat your space like it's hers. 3 weeks ago, Beth's most recent relationship blew up. Messy breakup, cheating involved, police were called once. I don't know the full story, and I honestly don't want to. She showed up at our place 2 days later with her car packed to the brim and a bottle of wine. Jake let her in, of course, and she stayed with us for 3 nights just to regroup. I was fine with that. Initially, I get it. She was clearly in a rough spot and needed a soft place to land. But by day 3, she had commandeered our guest room, started using my skincare and hair products without asking, left dirty dishes everywhere, and kept inviting her friends over to vent. She even FaceTimed with her ex in our living room loudly, yelling and crying, while Jake and I were trying to watch a movie. That night, I pulled Jake aside and said this can't be indefinite. He agreed, kind of. He's always had a soft spot for Beth and tends to see her through rose-colored glasses. He said we'd talk about it. Well, the next day, Beth announced she decided she was going to move in for a while. No real timeline, no plan, just like that. She'd help with groceries and stay out of the way, but she didn't seem to get that this wasn't her house. I immediately said, "Hold on, Jake and I haven't agreed to that." She looked at me like I'd slapped her. Jake didn't say anything, which made me even more furious. That night, I laid it all out to him. I said that I love him, but I did not sign up to live with his sister, who is chaotic and doesn't respect boundaries. I said I didn't feel comfortable in my own home with her there, that I was okay with helping her get back on her feet, even helping her with a deposit or co-signing something temporarily, but she could not live with us. Jake said he understood, but that it would just be for a little while, and that she didn't have anywhere else to go. He said he couldn't kick his own sister out when she was down. I told him I wasn't asking him to kick her out on the street. I said we could help her look for a sublet or an extended stay place, even cover a few weeks if we needed to. But she could not live in our home, not after how invasive and disruptive she had already been in just a few days. This turned into a full-blown argument. Jake said I was being selfish and cold, that if it were my brother in the same situation, he would never say no. For the record, my brother is very stable and would never, ever show up on someone's doorstep uninvited and just stay. I said that wasn't a fair comparison, but this was about boundaries, not blood. Beth, of course, overheard part of the argument and came into the room crying, saying she knew I never liked her and that she guessed she'll figure something else out. Jake went after her, and I sat there, fuming and feeling like the villain in my own home. The next day, she packed up and left in a dramatic fashion, slamming cabinets and refusing to say goodbye. Jake hasn't been the same since. He's distant, short with me, and keeps bringing up how cold I was about the whole thing. I try to talk to him again, but he just keeps saying, "I just don't understand how you can turn your back on family like that." I reminded him again that I never said we wouldn't help her. I just said she couldn't live with us. I asked him what his endgame was. What if she stayed for months? A year? What if she never left? He didn't have an answer. Now, Jake's mom has gotten involved. She called me and said she heard I'd kicked Beth out when she had nowhere else to go. I corrected her, but she was clearly already convinced I was the bad guy. She said she was disappointed in me and hoped I'd come around. I'm getting texts from other family members who don't even know the full story, saying things like, "We take care of our own," and "Beth's always been fragile." My own parents think I did the right thing and are firmly in my corner, but Jake is still cold toward me. It's been over a week now, and I feel like there's this growing wedge between us. I keep replaying everything in my head. Could I have been more flexible, more patient? Did I misjudge how long she really needed? But then I think about how she acted when she was here for just a few days, and I feel confident in my decision. Still, it's hard not to question yourself when your own husband is making you feel like you betrayed someone. I didn't want to be heartless. I wanted to protect my home and my peace. So, AITA, hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for telling my sister I won't help her anymore after she ruined my relationship. I, 28F, have always been close to my younger sister, Amanda, 25F. Our parents were divorced when we were kids, and I sort of became her second mom in many ways. I helped her with everything: homework, applying to college, moving into her first apartment. When she was going through a rough breakup 2 years ago, she practically lived with me for 3 months, crying on my couch and eating all my snacks. I never minded. I love her, and I always thought we had each other's backs. But now, after what she did, I honestly don't know where we stand. So here's the context. I've been with my boyfriend Daniel, 31M, for 3 years. We met at work, hit it off right away, and moved in together last year. He's thoughtful, grounded, and probably the most emotionally intelligent guy I've ever dated. We're both a little introverted, homebodies who love quiet weekends, cooking together, reading, watching obscure documentaries. My sister, on the other hand, is very outgoing, energetic, the life of the party. She's bounced between jobs and cities, but she's one of those people who always lands on her feet somehow. At first, Amanda and Daniel got along great. She would come over for dinner, they'd talk about books or films, sometimes she'd stay the weekend. I was happy they liked each other. Daniel has always been a little wary of getting too close to my family. His own family is extremely private, and he doesn't do drama well, but he made an effort because he knew Amanda was important to me. Things started getting weird late last year. Amanda had been through another breakup, her third in 2 years, and once again, she started relying heavily on me for emotional support. I was okay with that at first, but she became needy, constantly texting, calling, showing up at our apartment unannounced, expecting me to drop everything. I set some gentle boundaries. I told her I could talk after work or see her on weekends, but I needed space too. She said she understood. Around the same time, Daniel began acting distant. Not cold, just withdrawn. I asked if everything was okay, and he said he felt like Amanda was around a lot and it was starting to wear on him. I agreed. He wasn't saying she was a bad person, just that her constant presence made it hard for us to have quiet time together. We talked, and I told Amanda that we loved her, but we needed our space. She said she got it. Then things escalated. About 2 months ago, Amanda came to me crying, saying she felt like she was being pushed out of my life. She said Daniel didn't like her, that he was trying to isolate me, that she saw warning signs. I told her she was overreacting and that she couldn't expect me to be her emotional crutch forever. She didn't take that well and stormed out. We didn't speak for a couple of weeks. I thought she needed space. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, Daniel sat me down and said he thought we should take a break. I was floored. He said he felt overwhelmed, like he couldn't handle the pressure of being in the middle of this unspoken tension between me and my sister. He said it was affecting his mental health, that he felt like he was always walking on eggshells. He didn't blame me, but he said he needed to step back and reevaluate. I was devastated, but I respected his decision and gave him space. A week later, I ran into one of Daniel's coworkers at a coffee shop, just a casual acquaintance, and they asked if I was okay after everything with Amanda. I was confused. I asked what they meant. They got uncomfortable and changed the subject. That night, I asked Daniel if Amanda had contacted him. He hesitated and then admitted that she had. Repeatedly. Apparently, Amanda had been texting and demaying him for weeks, even before he suggested the break. She told him I was emotionally manipulative, that I talked about him behind his back, that I told her I was only staying with him until I found someone better. None of this was true. He said he didn't believe her at first, but as things got more tense at home, it made him question everything. He felt played. I couldn't believe it. I confronted Amanda, and at first she denied it. Then, when I showed her screenshots Daniel gave me, she got defensive and said she was protecting me, that she didn't think Daniel was good for me and wanted me to see that. I was shaking with rage. I told her she had no right to interfere in my relationship and that she had lied, flat out lied, to someone I loved. Her response? I thought you'd thank me one day. I told her to leave and that I didn't want to see or speak to her again for the foreseeable future. That was a month ago. Since then, I've been in touch with Daniel. We've been talking tentatively, carefully, and trying to rebuild some trust. He says he's still hurt, but he misses me. We're taking it slow. Amanda, meanwhile, has been blowing up my phone. Apologies, voice notes, long texts about how she made a mistake, how she needs me, how I'm her only family. My mom has even called, saying Amanda is depressed, not eating, barely leaving her apartment. I told my mom what happened, and she was horrified. But now I'm getting guilt-tripped. Mom says I should at least talk to Amanda, hear her out. That she's not well. That family is family. That maybe she got too attached because of how close we were growing up. But I don't think that excuses what she did. So I told Amanda, over text, that I wished her well, but I would no longer be there for her. That she crossed the line and I needed to protect my peace. She didn't respond. But now everyone's making me feel like I'm being cruel for abandoning her when she's at her lowest. I don't know. I feel broken, like my world flipped inside out. A part of me wants to help her. The bigger part of me wants to cut her off forever. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I just know I can't go back to how things were. So, AITA for telling my sister I won't help her anymore after what she did to my relationship. AITA for refusing to share the inheritance my sister and I both received from our grandmother because I believe she wasted hers. My sister, Claire, 32F, and I, 30M, were raised by our maternal grandmother after our parents died in a car accident when we were very young. Grandma was everything to us. She was strict but loving, always making sure we had what we needed and teaching us to be independent and hardworking. She passed away 2 years ago, and it hit us both really hard. When she passed, her will divided everything equally between the two of us. That included her house, savings, and a few investments she had made over the years. After taxes and legal fees, we each ended up with about $275,000. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was enough to give us some serious breathing room in our lives. Claire and I had very different attitudes toward money. I work in IT and live modestly. I've always saved aggressively and invested wisely. Claire, on the other hand, has struggled with money for as long as I can remember. She's bounced between jobs, lived above her means, and often leaned on our grandma for help. She always had a new phone, new clothes, or was planning a vacation she couldn't afford. Grandma would often bail her out, but she also warned Claire more than once to grow up and take responsibility for her finances. When we received our inheritance, I immediately paid off the remainder of my student loans and invested most of the rest. I kept some in savings for emergencies and continued living pretty much the same way I always had. Claire, meanwhile, went on what I can only describe as a spending spree. Within the first 6 months, she had bought a new car, a luxury SUV she absolutely did not need, remodeled her apartment, and took 2 international vacations, one to Bali, the other to Italy. She also invested in a friend's startup that went nowhere. By the end of the year, she was out of money. She called me crying, saying she had miscalculated some things and needed help with rent. I gave her $2,000 with the agreement that it was a one-time thing. She promised she was getting her act together. That was a lie. Over the next year, she kept asking for money, for medical bills, car repairs, credit card debt. I always said no. I reminded her she had received the same amount I did and chose to spend it irresponsibly. Every time I refused, she would get emotional and accuse me of not caring about her. Eventually, I stopped answering her calls if I suspected she was going to ask for money. Last month, Claire showed up unannounced at my apartment with a suitcase and said she was being evicted. She had nowhere else to go. I let her stay the night on my couch, and the next day we sat down and had a long, difficult conversation. She admitted she was terrible with money, that she felt overwhelmed, and that she envied how I seemed to have it all figured out. She asked me to help her, not just with advice this time, but financially. She said I still had most of the inheritance and that I should share it with her because we're family and Grandma wouldn't want one of us to be suffering while the other is fine. I told her that Grandma gave us each the same amount, and we each made our choices. I chose to be careful. She chose to treat the money like a temporary windfall. I reminded her of all the times Grandma had to bail her out when we were younger. I told her Grandma wanted us to be responsible adults, and sharing my portion wouldn't honor that. It would just enable the same behavior all over again. Claire exploded. She called me a selfish Greedy bastard. She said I always thought I was better than her and that I was just waiting for her to fail so I could feel superior. She left and has been staying with a friend, but the fallout has been ugly. She told our aunt, our only other close relative, and now I'm getting messages from family members saying I'm being heartless and cold. They say money shouldn't come between siblings, and that family means supporting each other, no matter what. I tried explaining my side to a few people, but it always comes back to, you're doing fine. She's not. Why wouldn't you help her? I get that Claire is struggling, but I feel like giving her more money is just throwing it into a hole. She hasn't done anything to show she's changed or learned from this. I offered to help her make a budget, find a more affordable place, and even help with job applications, but she only wants money. Now I'm starting to question if I'm being too rigid. I know she's family, and I love her, but I also feel like she's trying to manipulate me with guilt. Grandma always said to help people who help themselves, and I'm not seeing that in Claire. A few nights ago, I had dinner with an old friend who knows us both, and she said something that stuck with me. If you keep saving her from herself, she'll never stop drowning. But I can't shake the feeling that maybe I should just give her a small portion to get her back on her feet, like $10,000 or something. But then I wonder, what happens when that runs out? Do I keep giving? So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to share my inheritance with my sister after she blew through hers. AITA for confronting my sister after she used my personal journal against me in an argument. So a little backstory. I'm a 26-year-old woman, and I have a younger sister, Clara, who's 23. We grew up in a fairly normal family. Nothing too out of the ordinary, but my sister and I always had a complicated relationship. We were never super close growing up, mostly because Clara would constantly compete for attention and was often a bit more dramatic than I was. She would make a huge deal out of the smallest things, and I, on the other hand, always prefer to keep my thoughts and feelings to myself. Throughout our childhood, I was the quieter, more reserved one, and Clara was the loud and outgoing one who always wanted the spotlight. I didn't mind that much because, honestly, I valued my space and privacy. I think Clara resented that a bit, though, because she always felt like I was keeping secrets or didn't want to let her in. She's always been more extroverted and loved sharing everything, whereas I've always been more introspective and liked processing things on my own. Fast forward to the present, and things haven't changed much. I'm still pretty private, and Clara is still very much the type of person who needs to be the center of attention. This became a point of tension a few months ago when we were having a family get-together at my mom's house. So, the conflict began when Clara found my journal. I know. Some of you might already be thinking, what were you doing leaving your journal around? But it wasn't like I left it lying around carelessly. I had it on my nightstand, which was in my room, and I made it clear to Clara that it was private. I've always kept my journal private, as it's a place for me to reflect on my thoughts, process difficult emotions, and, honestly, vent when things get tough. My journal has been a form of therapy for me, and I never imagined Clara would go snooping around in it. But Clara, being Clara, did exactly that. She went through my personal journal while I was out of the house, and she found some pretty intense stuff. Stuff I never intended to share with anyone, especially not her. In my journal, I had written about a lot of personal struggles I've been going through, stress at work, some relationship issues, and a few deep-seated fears and insecurities. Some of the stuff was even embarrassing, stuff I hadn't told anyone. I didn't know about it at first. It wasn't until a few weeks later when we had another family gathering at my mom's place. Everything seemed fine at first, but then Clara started acting off. She was making snide comments about how someone had a lot of bottled-up emotions. At first, I thought maybe she was just being her usual self, trying to get attention, but then she said something that completely threw me off. In front of everyone, she said, "I don't know why you write about how much you hate your job. You're lucky to even have a job in this economy. Some of us have it much harder." It was said in a mocking tone, and I was shocked. I had never shared my feelings about my job with anyone, especially not Clara. I immediately realized that she had gone through my journal. My heart dropped. I confronted her privately after the gathering, asking her point blank if she had read my journal. She hesitated for a moment, then admitted it. She claimed that she was just curious and that she didn't mean to cause any harm, but that It was just so interesting to read about all the drama you keep bottled up inside. I was furious. How could she invade my privacy like that? That journal was my safe space, a place where I could express myself without fear of judgment or ridicule. The fact that she not only read it, but then used my most vulnerable moments against me in front of my family was beyond hurtful. I told Clara she had seriously crossed a line and that I couldn't believe she'd betray my trust like that. But she didn't see it that way. She said that I was overreacting and that I shouldn't be so secretive. She argued that if I didn't want anyone to know about the things I wrote, then I shouldn't have kept a journal in the first place. She even went as far as to say that I was being dramatic and that I should get over it because everyone has problems and it's not like I was writing anything too personal. I felt like she just didn't get it. She didn't understand the deep sense of betrayal I was feeling. It wasn't just about her reading my journal. It was about her using it against me, making my personal struggles a joke for the sake of her own amusement. After everything, I told her I needed space from her, that I was really hurt by what she had done. She kept trying to convince me that I was being too sensitive and that I should forgive her because, in her eyes, it wasn't a big deal. She even said, "It's not like I told anyone, right?" Well, that was the final straw. I felt like if I forgave her, it would set a dangerous precedent for how she treated my privacy and my emotions. I also felt like if I let it slide, it would teach her that it was okay to disrespect my boundaries. So, I ended up telling our parents what had happened. I didn't want to make a huge deal out of it, but I felt like they needed to know how their daughter had violated my trust. When I told them, my mom was absolutely furious with Clara, but my dad took Clara's side. He said I should have been more careful about where I kept my things, and that Clara didn't deserve to be vilified for something so small. He even argued that it wasn't like Clara shared the journal's contents with anyone. So what was the big deal? My mom disagreed with him completely, but it caused a lot of tension in the family, and now things are even more strained than before. Clara's been trying to smooth things over, apologizing here and there, but it feels like a half-hearted apology. I don't feel like she truly understands why what she did was wrong. Now I'm left wondering if I overreacted. Should I just let this go and try to move on? Or did I do the right thing by standing my ground and confronting her? AITA for confronting my sister over this? AITA for refusing to let my sister move in after she got evicted, even though she has nowhere else to go? Okay, this is going to be a long one, but I need to know if I'm in the wrong here, so please bear with me. I, 28F, have an older sister, Emma, 31F. Growing up, we were close. We didn't have the best childhood. Our parents weren't around much, and we had to rely on each other to get by. Emma was always the wild child. She was the one who rebelled against everything. And although I didn't always agree with her choices, I admired her confidence in doing things her own way. However, as we got older, Emma's life choices started to catch up with her. She dropped out of college, got involved with some questionable people, and started bouncing between low-paying jobs. Over the years, she managed to get herself into a series of bad financial situations. Every few months, I'd get a call from her saying she was in trouble and asking if I could help. I did what I could. I gave her money, helped her find a place to stay temporarily, and even bailed her out of situations where she got into debt. Around a year ago, she moved into a small apartment in the city with a roommate. For a while, things seemed to be going better for her. She was working at a decent job, and I thought maybe she had turned things around. However, last week, I got the call I was dreading. Emma told me that she had been evicted from her apartment because she hadn't been able to pay the rent for the past 3 months. She said her roommate had moved out, and since she couldn't find another one, she was unable to cover the full rent herself. She told me she had nowhere else to go and asked if she could move in with me. Now, I'll be honest, my first instinct was to say no, but she sounded so desperate and helpless that I hesitated. I thought about it for a few days and realized that I have a few good reasons why I don't want her living with me. 1, I have a family now. I'm married to my husband, David, 30M, and we have a 2-year-old son, Charlie. Our place isn't huge, and while it's cozy for us, adding another adult to the mix would make it feel cramped. Plus, we don't have the extra space for someone to stay long-term. 2, Emma's history of poor decisions. As much as I love my sister, she has a pattern of making impulsive and reckless choices. I've seen her blow through money get involved with toxic people, and make excuses for her mistakes. I know she's a grown adult, but I'm honestly worried that having her live with us would be enabling her behavior. I don't want to be put in a position where I'm constantly cleaning up after her, or worse, my husband and son having to deal with the fallout of her actions. 3. My husband isn't on board. I talked to David about it, and while he is generally supportive of my family, he made it clear that he doesn't feel comfortable with Emma moving in. He said that he doesn't trust her judgment, and he's worried about the strain it might put on our relationship. We already have our hands full with our toddler, and he doesn't want any added stress or tension in our home. 4. The timing isn't right. I'm not saying that Emma doesn't deserve help, but right now isn't the best time for us. My husband is going through a big career change, and I'm planning to go back to work soon. We're already figuring out daycare for Charlie, and adding another person into the mix would just make everything feel even more chaotic. So, after thinking about it for a while, I called Emma and explained my reasons. I told her that while I love her and I wish I could help, I just don't think it's a good idea for her to move in with us. I offered to help her find a new place to live or to help her pay for a short-term rental or hotel, but I couldn't take her in. She was not happy with my decision. She cried on the phone and called me heartless. She said I was abandoning her when she needed me the most, and that I was just like everyone else who'd turned their back on her. She accused me of being selfish and said that I had everything I needed while she had nothing. She even pointed out that I've always helped her in the past, so why was this time different? I tried to stay calm and explain that I wasn't turning my back on her, but that this wasn't a situation I could just ignore. I told her that I couldn't sacrifice my own family's well-being to accommodate her, especially since she hadn't made any effort to get her life together in the long term. She didn't take it well, and we ended the conversation with her saying she'd never ask me for help again. Since then, I haven't heard from her. I know she's staying with a friend for now, but I'm still feeling conflicted. On one hand, I feel like I've done the right thing by setting boundaries and not enabling her behavior. But on the other hand, I feel guilty for not helping her when she's clearly in a tough spot. I keep wondering if I could have done more or if I'm being too harsh. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister move in, even though she's homeless and has nowhere else to go? Or should I have made more of an effort to help her out? AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding after she disinvited my husband? So, to give you some background, I, 29F, have been best friends with Jess, 29F, since we were in high school. We've been through everything together. Our first boyfriends, breakups, bad family situations, the whole thing. For the past few years, Jess has been in a relationship with Mike, 31M, and they've been living together for a while now. Honestly, I've always thought they made a good couple, even though Mike can be a bit, I don't know, distant, I guess. But I chalked it up to him being a little socially awkward. He's always been nice to me, though, and I always get along with him. I met my husband, Ryan, 30M, about a year after Jess and Mike got together, and we've been married for 3 years. Ryan and Jess have always gotten along fine, but they've never been super close. They've only hung out a handful of times, mostly in group settings. Jess and I are extremely close, but I know that when she and Mike are around, there's a bit of an awkward tension between Mike and Ryan. They just don't seem to vibe with each other the way Jess and I do, and I always assumed that was fine. Anyway, Jess and Mike got engaged last year, and I was absolutely thrilled for them. I thought it was going to be this great celebration, and naturally, I assumed I'd be a bridesmaid. We've been through so much together, and I couldn't imagine not being there by her side. I asked her about it early on, and she confirmed that I would be her maid of honor, which made me so happy. Fast forward to a few months ago. Jess starts planning the wedding, and the guest list is coming together. A couple of weeks ago, she called me up and asked to meet in person to talk about some wedding stuff. I didn't think much of it. Maybe she needed help with something. When we met up, she seemed a little tense, but I didn't think too much of it at first. She told me that there had been some complications with the guest list and that she had been talking it over with Mike. Apparently, Mike didn't want Ryan to come to the wedding. I was honestly taken aback. Mike and Ryan have never had a huge falling out or anything, but they're not exactly best friends either. Still, they've always been civil when they've interacted. Jess explained that Mike felt uncomfortable around Ryan and didn't want to ruin the vibe at their wedding. I was honestly shocked, but I tried to be understanding. At first, Jess suggested that maybe Ryan could just come to the reception and not the ceremony, but then she hesitated and said, "Actually, I think it might be better if Ryan just doesn't come at all." I was floored. I asked her if she was serious, and she said yes, that Mike really didn't feel comfortable with Ryan being there. She tried to explain that it wasn't personal, but that Mike was just really stressed about the wedding, and this was something that was weighing on him. I felt like I was in a bad dream. Honestly, I asked her if she was seriously asking me to come to her wedding without my husband. I mean, we've been married for 3 years now, and we do everything together. I can't imagine going to a major event like that without him. She said that she didn't want to put me in a tough spot, but that this was really important to Mike, and she just hoped I could understand. She kept stressing that she didn't want to lose our friendship over this, but she needed to respect Mike's wishes. I was honestly stunned. I've known Jess for over a decade, and I've never had her ask me to choose between her and my husband. To make matters worse, Jess said that if I chose to bring Ryan, it would create a rift between her and Mike, and she didn't want the wedding to be ruined by any kind of drama. I tried to stay calm, but I could feel myself getting upset. I told her that I didn't think it was fair to ask me to choose between her and my husband, and I couldn't just show up at her wedding without him. She seemed really hurt by my reaction and said that it wasn't about me choosing sides. It was just about Mike's comfort level, and she was trying to keep things from escalating. I left the meeting feeling so conflicted and honestly pretty angry. Over the next couple of days, I tried to talk to Ryan about it, but he was understandably hurt too. He said that if Jess wanted to have a wedding without him there, he wouldn't make a big deal about it, but he also said he didn't think I should go without him. He was supportive of whatever decision I made, but I could tell it really hurt him that Jess had made this request. I didn't want to cause any drama, but I also didn't want to lose a friendship over something as ridiculous as not inviting my husband to her wedding. I called Jess a few days later and told her I wasn't comfortable attending the wedding if Ryan wasn't invited. I said that I didn't want to make things difficult for her, but I couldn't go without him. She seemed upset, but said she understood, even though she was disappointed. She said she still valued our friendship, but that she might need some time to process everything. A few days after that, Jess texted me saying that she had decided to go in a different direction with her maid of honor, and that she wouldn't be able to have me in that role anymore. I was crushed. I hadn't expected her to disinvite me from the wedding altogether, but I guess that's what happened. She said she hoped we could still be friends, but I honestly don't know where we stand now. Now, I'm feeling really torn. On one hand, I want to be understanding and support her, but on the other hand, I feel like she's asking me to choose between her and my husband, which doesn't seem fair. I don't know if I overreacted or if Jess was wrong to make that kind of request. I feel like I've lost my best friend over something that should have been a non-issue, but I also don't think I should be expected to attend her wedding without my husband by my side. AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding after she disinvited my husband? AITA for not attending my best friend's wedding because I didn't agree with her choice of partner? I, 28F, have been friends with Maggie, 29F, since we were kids. We grew up together, spent holidays together, and have always been there for each other. Maggie is like a sister to me, and I always thought she'd have the kind of relationship that I would envy. She's smart, beautiful, and kind, and I've always thought she deserved someone who would treat her right. Fast forward to the present. Maggie is getting married. The problem? I can't stand her fiancé, David, 32M, and I've never been able to warm up to him. I've tried. I really have, but there's just something about him that rubs me the wrong way. I've tried to overlook it. I've tried to be happy for Maggie because I want her to be happy, but every time I'm around him, I feel uncomfortable and I can't ignore it any longer. The first time I met David, he seemed fine. He was charming, polite, and he seemed like he genuinely cared about Maggie. But as I spent more time around him, I started to notice little things. He would often make snide comments about women in general, always in a joking manner, but it was clear that he didn't have much respect for them. He'd talk about how he needed a woman who knew her place and how women shouldn't be so independent. I just brushed it off at first, thinking maybe he was joking or I was misreading the situation. But as time went on, his comments became more frequent and more offensive. There were also other red flags. He was dismissive of Maggie's career and ambitions, always belittling her dreams. And when she'd bring up something she was passionate about, he would either change the subject or make a sarcastic remark. It wasn't just about her career, though. David has a way of making everything about himself. During group conversations, he constantly hijacks the topic and makes everything about his achievements, his plans, or his opinions. I started to notice that Maggie would often look uncomfortable when he'd dominate the conversation, but she never said anything. The real turning point for me came when Maggie confided in me that David had told her he didn't want her to have a night out with the girls because he didn't trust her around other guys. I was furious when she told me this, and I immediately voiced my concerns. I told her that it sounded controlling and that he was trying to isolate her from her friends. Maggie, however, just brushed it off, saying he was being protective and that it wasn't a big deal. I tried to explain to her that it was a sign of insecurity and that relationships shouldn't be built on trust issues. She got defensive and told me I didn't understand because I've been single for a while. At that point, I started feeling like I was watching my best friend slowly lose herself. She started canceling plans with me more often to spend time with David, and when we did hang out, she'd constantly talk about him. It was as if her whole world revolved around him now. The old Maggie, the one who was independent and had her own life outside of a relationship, seemed to be fading away. It was heartbreaking to watch, and I didn't know how to handle it. I've had several long conversations with Maggie about my concerns, but every time I brought them up, she would get upset and tell me I was being too judgmental. She told me that I didn't know David like she did, and that I needed to trust her judgment. I told her that I trusted her, but I didn't trust him, and I worried that she was making a mistake. She said that I was just jealous and didn't want her to be happy, which really stung. I told her that it wasn't about jealousy, it was about her well-being, but she didn't seem to see it that way. When she got engaged, I was happy for her at first, even though I had reservations about David. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't support her marriage. I didn't think David was the right person for her, and I couldn't bring myself to stand by her side on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. It felt like I was condoning everything I'd seen that made me uncomfortable, and I just couldn't do it. I decided to tell her that I wouldn't be attending the wedding. I knew it would hurt her, but I felt like I had to be honest. I told her that I didn't think David was the right person for her, and that I couldn't support their marriage. I told her I would always be there for her, but I couldn't be a part of something I didn't believe in. Maggie was devastated. She cried, told me I was being selfish, and said I was ruining our friendship over a guy she loved. She said she had made up her mind, and nothing I said would change it. Now, I'm feeling like maybe I went too far. I know I hurt her, and that wasn't my intention. I just didn't want to be a part of something that felt wrong. But at the same time, I feel like I'm doing the right thing by being honest with her, even if it's difficult. I know I can't change who she loves, but I also know that I can't pretend to be okay with it. So, AITA for not attending my best friend's wedding because I don't approve of her fiancé. AITA for not letting my brother's fiancé stay with us during their wedding week. So, this all started when my older brother, let's call him Dan, got engaged. I'm 28, and Dan is 31. We've always had a pretty good relationship, but lately, things have been tense because of his fiancée, Alice. She's 29 and has always rubbed me the wrong way. I know, that's not ideal, but I've tried to be nice and respectful. I never outright said anything, but I couldn't help feeling like she was a little bit controlling and had this way of acting like she was above everyone else. It wasn't just me either. Most of our family felt a little off about her, but we kept it to ourselves. Now, fast forward to wedding planning. Dan and Alice decided to have a destination wedding, and they were planning on having their immediate family stay with them at this beautiful house they rented for the week before the wedding. At first, I thought it would be a fun opportunity for family bonding and spending time together before the big day. But then Alice dropped a bombshell. She asked if I would be okay with her and Dan staying at my place for a few nights before they headed to the wedding house. She claimed it would be easier for them since my place was a short drive to the airport, and they'd have a quiet spot to relax before the madness of the wedding. I thought about it for a second and then said yes, even though I had reservations. My place is fairly small, and while I love my brother, I know how stressed out he gets around big events. I wasn't sure how the two of them would handle the pressure, and I wasn't exactly thrilled about hosting his fiancée, who I didn't get along with. The first night was fine. We had dinner, talked a bit, and it was honestly a little awkward but manageable. But by the second night, things started to get tense. Alice seemed to take over the entire space. She'd make comments about how my apartment needed some work and would offer unsolicited advice on how I should decorate or organize my things. At one point, she started rearranging the kitchen because she didn't like how I kept my spices. I thought it was strange, but I didn't want to cause a scene, so I just let it slide. But it wasn't just the little things. Alice started making passive-aggressive remarks about my life in general. I'm a freelance writer, and I've been struggling to find steady work recently. Alice made it a point to comment on how unpredictable my job seemed and how I probably didn't have a retirement plan. I could tell she was subtly judging my career and lifestyle choices, and it was really starting to wear on me. Things escalated further when Dan got a call from their wedding planner during dinner on the third night. He stepped outside to take the call, and Alice immediately turned to me and started talking about how much better their wedding was going to be compared to any of the weddings I'd been to in the past. I just nodded, trying not to engage, but then she said, I think it's cute that you're doing this whole freelance thing, but when you hit 30, you might start to feel the pressure to get your life together. I mean, don't you worry about that. I was floored. It was such a backhanded comment, and I felt my face flush with anger. I didn't say anything at the time, but after she left the room to go change into her pajamas, I called my best friend and vented about it. My best friend, who knows Alice well, told me that I shouldn't let her treat me that way and that I needed to set boundaries. The next morning, I had enough. I wasn't going to continue hosting someone who made me feel like crap about my life choices. So, when Dan and Alice came downstairs for breakfast, I told them I wasn't comfortable with Alice staying with me any longer. I explained that I felt like she was overstepping and making me uncomfortable, and I needed space. Dan got really defensive, asking if I could just put up with it for a few more days because they were about to leave for the wedding house. I told him no, that I wasn't going to tolerate Alice's behavior any longer, especially in my own home. Dan said that he didn't understand why I was making such a big deal out of it, and Alice seemed genuinely confused as to why I was upset. She started crying, which made me feel even worse, and Dan immediately went into protective brother mode, trying to console her. It was all a lot, and honestly, I felt like they were ganging up on me. But I stood my ground. I told them both that if they didn't leave, I would leave myself. Eventually, they packed up and went to a hotel nearby for the night. Now, my family is pissed at me. My mom says I should have just sucked it up and that it was just a few days until the wedding. My dad is on my side, but he's not saying much. Dan hasn't spoken to me since, and I'm starting to feel like I might have messed up. I know weddings are stressful, but Alice's comments were starting to get under my skin, and I didn't feel like I should just keep quiet and take it. I want to be a good sister, but I also don't want to be treated like I'm beneath them. AITA for asking my brother and his fiancée to leave my place during their wedding week. AITA for telling my sister she can't stay at my house after she accused me of being a bad mom. I, 30F, have a 4-year-old daughter, Emma, and I'm married to my husband, David, 32M. We've always been a pretty chill family, and I'm lucky enough to be a stay-at-home mom. My sister, Sarah, 28F, has always been a bit of a free spirit. She never wanted kids and made it clear from the beginning that she doesn't get why I would stay home all day to take care of one child. We don't have a huge age gap, so we've always been close, but I noticed the tension growing over the past couple of years after I became a mom. Recently, Sarah came to town for a work trip and asked if she could stay with us. I said sure, she's family, and it's been a while since we had any real time together. At the time, Emma was sick with a cold, and I told Sarah that she might need to stay in her room a bit more to avoid catching anything. Sarah was fine with that and said she understood. Things started to get a little weird when Emma's cold got worse. She started to get a fever, and as any parent knows, that's when you start to get a little more anxious. I was up most of the night with her, giving her medicine, checking on her temperature, and making sure she was comfortable. David helped when he could, but since it was a school night, he had to get up early for work. So, it was most of me taking care of Emma. The next morning, Sarah came downstairs, and I was sitting on the couch with Emma, who was curled up in a blanket, watching cartoons. I hadn't gotten dressed yet, and my hair was a mess, but I was exhausted. Sarah immediately started making little comments about how messy the house was and how it must be hard for me to keep up with everything, especially while being a stay-at-home mom. I shrugged it off, but it felt a little dismissive, especially considering I'd been up all night caring for my sick daughter. Later that day, things took a turn. Emma's fever spiked, and I ended up calling her pediatrician. The doctor said I could try giving her a cool bath and to keep monitoring her. I went upstairs to do that, and Sarah came into the room and started talking about how she was concerned Emma was sick for so long and how I needed to take her to urgent care. I reassured her that I was doing everything I could, but Sarah kept pushing. She said things like, "I just don't think it's safe for you to be handling this alone," and "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" It felt like she was questioning my parenting in front of my daughter, and I was already stressed about Emma. At this point, I was frustrated, but I didn't want to start a fight. I just needed to focus on getting Emma better. I told Sarah that I was handling things and that it wasn't necessary for her to keep hovering. I could see she was a little annoyed, but she backed off and we moved on with the day. That evening, I made dinner, and we were all sitting at the table when Sarah dropped the bombshell. She said, I think you're really doing Emma a disservice by not taking care of yourself more. You're always so stressed out, and it's affecting your relationship with David and how you take care of Emma." At first, I didn't know what she was talking about. I said, "What do you mean?" And she went on to say that I was too tired and overwhelmed, and that I wasn't present enough for Emma. She made it sound like I was neglecting my child, even though I'd been doing everything I could to care for her, especially with how sick she was. I felt my blood boil. I snapped and said, "I'm doing my best, Sarah. I'm literally a mom. I don't need you telling me how to take care of my daughter." That's when Sarah turned on me and said, "You should have never quit your job. You should have hired a nanny or something so you could have a break. You're just using Emma as an excuse to avoid having a life outside of being a mom." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I've been a stay-at-home mom because I wanted to be there for Emma, and I was doing everything in my power to make sure she was taken care of. To have Sarah, of all people, accuse me of using my daughter as an excuse for laziness, it hit me hard. David tried to step in and tell Sarah to drop it, but Sarah kept going, saying that I was stifling my potential by staying at home and that I should let go of the idea that being a mom had to be my entire identity. It was like a switch flipped in me, and I couldn't hold back anymore. I told Sarah that she could leave. I told her that if she didn't respect my parenting and my choices, she didn't have to stay in my house. She was in total shock, but I couldn't deal with her putting me down like that in front of my daughter. Sarah left that night, and we haven't spoken since. My parents think I overreacted and that I should have just let her stay and apologized, but I feel like I have every right to stand up for myself. She attacked my choices as a mother and basically told me I wasn't doing enough for my family. I don't know what it is with her, but it feels like she thinks I'm supposed to live up to some perfect standard that she's set, even though she's never had kids. I guess I'm just confused about whether I did the right thing by asking her to leave. I don't think I was overreacting. I was just defending myself, but now I'm feeling guilty. So, AITA for telling my sister she couldn't stay at my house after she accused me of being a bad mom. AITA for telling my sister that I won't help her with her wedding because she's not even helping herself. So, here's some background. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Rachel, 24F. Rachel is about to get married to her fiancé, Mark, 27M, in a few months, and they're planning a wedding that's supposed to be this big, fancy event. However, the more I hear about it, the more it feels like this wedding is becoming a massive mess. And it's mostly due to Rachel's total lack of effort. Rachel has always been a bit of a princess, but she's never been particularly responsible. Growing up, I was always the one doing the heavy lifting in the family. I was the one who helped with the household chores, took care of our pets, and basically made sure things didn't fall apart. Rachel, on the other hand, often slacked off, and that has carried into her adult life. She never got the hang of paying her bills on time, maintaining a stable job, or managing her personal life. I've always been the one she turns to when she's in a bind. Over the last year, I've noticed Rachel getting more and more stressed about her wedding. She's constantly talking about how much work it is, how expensive it is, how overwhelming it all is, and how little time she has. She complains nonstop about all the little details. Yet when I ask if she's actually working on any of it, she never seems to have made any progress. It's like she expects everyone around her to take care of everything, from the venue to the decor to the guest list. At first, I tried to be supportive. I offered to help with the planning, thinking I could be the responsible one again and take some of the pressure off her. But every time I offered help, Rachel would make excuses. I don't know what I want yet, I'm too tired, or I'll do it later. I'd suggest hiring a wedding planner to ease the load. But Rachel always brushed it off, saying it was too expensive and that she could handle it herself. Fast forward to about 2 months ago. I'd already helped with a few minor things like suggesting venues and offering recommendations for photographers, but I started to feel like I was doing more than I should have. I started noticing that Rachel had started relying on me to make decisions, not just helping with the planning. She would call me, crying about something that went wrong, and expect me to fix it or make decisions for her. I started to feel like I was just a placeholder in her wedding plans. She was delegating every little detail to me, but nothing was ever getting done on her own end. The last straw was when Rachel asked me to help her find a dress for the wedding. I had taken the time to research a few shops and set up appointments for us. But when we went to the first store, Rachel spent the whole time complaining about how she didn't like the dresses, the fabric, the colors, the fit. It was exhausting. The entire day was a complete waste because Rachel couldn't make up her mind, and all she did was whine about how stressed she was. I asked her if she'd even looked at any dresses online, and she said no. So I took the reins and started searching for options on my own, showing her photos, trying to make decisions. But at the end of the day, she still couldn't commit to anything. It was clear that Rachel wasn't taking this wedding seriously, and she wasn't putting in any effort. So after that dress shopping fiasco, I had had enough. I called her up a few days later and told her I wouldn't be able to help her with the wedding anymore. I explained that I was feeling drained by the constant emotional labor, and it wasn't fair to me to keep stepping in and doing everything while she just sat back and let me. I told her that if she wanted the wedding of her dreams, she was going to have to put in the effort herself. I offered to be there on the day of the wedding, but I made it clear that I couldn't be involved in the planning anymore. Rachel was absolutely livid. She accused me of being selfish and abandoning her when she needed me most. She said that I was being a terrible sister and that I should be happy to help her with such an important part of her life. She said that weddings are overwhelming and that she's just feeling a little lost, and I should understand that. But the thing is, it's not like I haven't been there for her. I've helped her out so much already, and I can't be her emotional crutch anymore. She never seems to take any responsibility for her actions, and it's exhausting to keep trying to make things happen for her. Now, my family is divided. My mom is calling me a cold-hearted person for not helping my sister out. She says that Rachel needs me, and I should suck it up and just deal with the stress for the sake of family. My dad thinks I'm right, but he hasn't really spoken up because he doesn't want to get involved. My friends mostly agree with me. They think I've been more than patient, and I'm entitled to set boundaries. But Rachel keeps calling me, guilt-tripping me, and telling me that I'm ruining her special day. Part of me feels bad, but another part of me is just so over the whole situation. AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding because I'm tired of doing everything for her. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.